You can't have that control. That's what they're telling me.
Well, it's just a computer program, Ivan. Let's get to the point here. The Hungover Podcast, episode 130, where we review the Animatrix. I'm one of your hosts, Julien, alongside.
And I'm Ivan, and we're gonna get a clap sync at the end.
Yeah. Oh, fuck it. Anyways, I'll figure it out. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Of course, this is the epic conclusion to the films involving the Matrix anthology.
The 130th podcast, and it's the Matrix, the Animatrix.
Yes,
it's great.
That's what we went for. I don't know if we planned that at all. Anyways, we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what media have you been consuming, and what did you drink last night? Yvonne, take us away.
So, I have been going on a little bit of a health kick. I'm in the manic state of like my. I'm not
quarantine.
bipolar, but I'm not bipolar. But I'm experiencing these rolling waves of being like super depressed and then like having the energy to do stuff.
Yeah, man.
I think it's just like quarantine bipolar. Not to take away from the actual diagnosis of bipolar or anything, but there's something about like just. I was so depressed I wasn't doing anything, and I was just a fat lazy piece of shit. And now I'm like running again, so I haven't been drinking too much. But the other day, I did make a hot buttered rum.
Oh yeah,
it's like a shot of rum, hot water, and then like a cinnamon sugar butter.
Yeah,
melts through. It's awesome. Laura for Christmas, because we had made hot buttered rum before and we're really stoked about it. Laura got me for, a really nice jar of buttered rum, or rum butter. So it's like,
well, those two things are very different. Hold on.
It's rum infused butter. I don't know how you would phrase it.
Oh yeah, rum butter. I would go with
rum butter. And so I made a hot buttered rum with my rum butter.
Oh yeah.
But instead of rum, I used honey moonshine.
Sounds great.
So it was a really delicious, nice, sweet. I used a ton of the butter, so it was really smooth.
Baby. Yeah, baby. Butter's the greatest thing.
Had a really nice, like, spiced, smooth, fatty, but cut through because the moonshine is 50 ABV.
Nice.
So
it's every sensation at once.
Everything except for MSG.
Yes. The Chinese would throw it in there. I'm sure it would be good.
I'm sure it would too, actually. A little bit of savory in there to, like, elevate the butter flavor. It'd be awesome.
Sick.
But that was probably the most interesting thing that I drank recently. I'm working my way through these bottles of wine that I purchased the case of. I think I've gotten through 2.
Okay.
I managed to drink 1 entire bottle in a night over the course of like 4 or 5 hours, but that was pretty low point in my depressive state. I was like, I'm just doing it. But I have been doing, I've been watching True Detective recently.
Sorry, I just turned off my fan. It's being picked up by the microphone. Anyways.
Copy. I've been watching True Detective is what I was saying.
True Detective? Very cool.
Yeah, so I went back and rewatched season 1. It's a really tough second screen show. I'm going to tell you that much. A lot happens that if you're not like fully paying attention, like your brain just turns off for a lot of the dialogue, and then you're going like, what the fuck is Matthew McConaughey saying? Which is the basic premise of that show, season 1. Season 1, it was pretty great. Then I had never been able to get through season 2. I'd watched the first episode, like I had attempted to finish it twice before I was finally like, quarantine life, I'm gonna fucking push through. So I finally got through season 2. It was alright. It was definitely worse than season 1. I think the fact that they had multiple directors and didn't have a singular like vision What I thought about season 1 was that it was really great. Is the aesthetic, the writing, the acting, everything seemed fluid and together. It was a really unique, like, piece of television. But season 2 had a lot of star power, and I don't think it was as cohesive in any form. Like, the acting was like hit or miss. I really didn't believe Vince Vaughn in that role. Whether I don't know whether the writing wasn't suited for him. I thought actually his best performance was the last bit that his character was on screen. I thought that was really good. Really strong, emotional, and like the audience really connected with the character in a way that I don't think they had the entire way through the series up until then.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. But, you know, as a whole, I think the season was just a little bit muddled. A lot more easily guessed and walked through, and you didn't really care a lot about the characters, and the decisions that they made also didn't make a ton of sense. Like the two main characters who end up like getting together or whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of comes out of nowhere and doesn't really have a purpose. It's like, I don't know. It didn't really seem as connectable or mysterious as the first season. So second season is much more easy to interpret.
Okay.
Which makes you want to... So, like, when the mystery isn't about, like, what the case is overall, because you're, like, able to keep up and follow through, there's not a lot of mystical philosophy as there was in Season 1 with Matthew McConaughey, so you're not, like, contemplating the universe as a flat circle.
Right, of course.
And when you don't have any of that, you just want to connect to the characters, but then they made all of the characters extremely unrelatable, or, like, they just fell flat. So there was nothing that really connected, like... You really got I felt that I got invested in both Woody Harrelson as a charismatic person and Matthew McConaughey as this kind of mysterious philosopher that was like smarter than I would ever be, you know, but still had a lot of troubles and problems. And nobody in the second season was smarter than I was, and everyone had a lot of flaws, but not a lot of like characteristics that I would favor or connect with. Season 3 I just started. It goes a lot more into the mystery kind of side of things, and it made me want to look up the Wikipedia and like read ahead and like uncover the mystery before, so that I knew what was going to happen, which I think is a great sign, right? You want your mystery to be something that people want to know the answer to.
Yeah.
So that it's been I mean, it's an old TV show now, but season 3 is recent. I guess it was in the last year, I feel like it came out. And really strong performance by Mahershala Ali. But I also really like the partner character. Roland West is like his partner as a detective. And that's a really strong performance from that actor. In general, I think this season is going to shape up to be a lot closer to season 1 than season 2. And it's been enjoyable so far. And it's sucked me into the point where I'm going back to single screening it. And, like, I don't feel comfortable playing Dragon Age Origins, which I've also gone back to, and watching True Detective on my second screen.
Boy, Dragon Age Origins, huh?
I was like, I'm basically in prison. I might as well play a prison-length game, you know?
Okay.
So I'm going through all of the Dragon Ages.
It's a lot of other games that came out recently.
I know. I bought and have not played a single minute of Death Stranding.
Yeah. Like, you could try that. You could play... No, I understand. Sometimes we're comfort food people. Human race is, I think, especially in these times. So we always go back to what we know, and don't like to branch out too much sometimes. I understand.
Yeah, I played
Comfort food.
Pathfinder Kingmaker fairly recently, like within the past 2 years. and that is like trying to attempt to rehash the old Baldur's Gate games in a new form. And I just think that Dragon Age Origins is like a really great atmosphere.
Last great BioWare game, right? That's BioWare?
Yeah. I think Dragon Age Inquisition was.
Oh wait, they made it. I mixed those two up. Yeah, that's the last good one they made.
Yeah. But in general, I think that series is the most well developed. It has this really rich world building.
Yeah.
Which I also kind of was in this mood where maybe I want to get back into D&D writing and kind of flush out the world that I was building. So going to a world where I could really investigate like levels of architecture.
Yeah, there's some similar tropes in those games, obviously, to D&D campaigns. Some D&D campaigns.
Yeah, and when you're world building, you can make your D&D world as close or as far away from things in Dragon Age Origins as possible.
Right,
like,
of course.
I've always had a difficulty with trying to understand how magic was viewed in my world, and like Dragon Age Origins, a lot like the whole Dragon Age series, a lot of that is like how the society deals with magic. Magic brings in demons and bad things, so they have Templars who look over mages and will kill them, and if they're going out of whack. But there are some people that are free mages, So it has a really intricate way of dealing with magic, and I think that's something that I really want to explore when I'm trying to develop my own world building in D&D.
Yeah, sounds great.
What have you been up to, Julian?
What have I been up to? Well, I've been working a lot. Obviously, not many people work anymore, but I'm one of those essential workers, I guess. So I work a lot, but I work in a butcher shop now. So hopefully, and I've moved on past chicken. I'm currently doing an apprenticeship at a butcher shop, a whole animal butcher shop. So hopefully we can have a podcast topic about that in the future when I know a little bit more. I think I already said that in a previous podcast, but I've been working a lot, and I as a consequence I get a lot of free meat. So nice. I've been cooking a lot. I bring home the meat and cook it on my weekends. This weekend I brought home a lot
bring home the bacon?
Yes, I haven't brought home bacon yet, but we definitely smoke bacon at our shop, or not at the shop, or the owner of the shop goes up to the farm that we get everything at and smokes it up there. But we do curing of hams and things and sausages in the shop, which is cool. But I've been cooking a lot, so let's see, this week I wanted to make a lasagna, so and Nikki and I we don't eat that much ground beef or beef at all because it's bad for our health. It affects Nikki's stomach in a unforeseen way. I don't really understand it. An understandable way. An ununderstandable, whatever. And
unfathomable.
And I've got bad health problems related to anything that has purines in it. So I try to stay away from beef, but I'm gonna try. I literally have to try the beef at our shop just so I can talk about it with customers, so I'm gonna try on that. But I found out that I can eat lamb, which is really great because I love lamb. And Nikki likes lamb too, so I make a lamb bolognese for my lasagnas. It's really fantastic. Bolognese. So I made the bolognese in preparation for a lasagna, but that's in our refrigerator right now. I got us some pork chops, threw those on the grill. And then also last night I've been working on a recipe for a chicken ballantine, but a Chinese style one. I think it turned out really well. We've got the Chinese sausage, the Chinese dried sausage, which I'm trying to convince my bosses to make. I'm gonna
Chinese dried sausage is like my favorite
it's
sausage
so
of
great.
all time.
It's called lap chung in Cantonese. But so if you're ever around a Chinese market or anything, go ahead and pick one of those up. They're really great. They're a little sweeter on the sweeter side. They're pork sausages, But I finally diced that up, and then I also finally diced up some shiitake mushrooms, and then I sauteed that and did a little seasoning with, and then also ginger and garlic scallions, and I deboned a chicken and stuffed it with that, and then served that over rice. I really want, like, in the future, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Oh well. But I do really, in the future, I don't know, at some point I just can foresee that being on a Chinese menu, and that's like a large dish that you would order for a family or something, and the restaurant only does like 3 or 4 of them per night. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 depending on how many large tables they get, but like that's something you can order with 4 people, and that can be
It's
one
a
of the dishes.
time-consuming thing.
Yeah, it's also
I
a time-consuming thing, but you could charge
even for
like $50
a professional
for
kitchen.
Absolutely.
Versus like what would be a regular meal, like deboning a chicken, doing the prep, rolling a chicken with all the wiring or whatever that you have to do for it is fucking intense, bruh. Of course, I always overstuff my chicken, so that's my problem.
Yeah, well, you gotta stuff it well, you know. They're paying for the goods inside. Anyways, I really liked it. I made a nice sauce with deglazed the pan with Chinese cooking wine, through some soy sauce in there, some vinegar. I have this Filipino vinegar that it's Datu Pati, I think is the name. It's made from cane sugar. It's really great vinegar, and it's used a lot for chicken adobo, I think, which is one of my favorite
really?
dishes.
I do love chicken
in the
adobo.
Philippines. And so I made a sauce, reduced that, finished it with some butter, threw that shit on the chicken. It was so good. I ate that over rice. So I think I've got the recipe at least in a pretty good spot. I'm working on it. I want to put like garnishing and things like that on it, but we'll see. And when
how are you gonna plate it, bro?
Yeah,
that's
I
the whole
plated
thing.
it pretty nicely. I mean, the slice, the medallions, and then I didn't have that. I didn't make enough sauce, but in the future I would make more. I actually over-reduced the sauce, but it was really good. Actually, it ended up being more like a glazed. It was pretty nice. And then I put the sauce on top. It was great. It was great. I'll serve it to you and Laura when all this shit is done or something.
Bro,
I think
that'd be
great.
amazing. You don't even have to include Laura. I'd be willing to eat it for the both of us.
That's fine with me too. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of cooking. Oh, and I also got some goat. We only get goat in the shop like once every 2 months for whatever reason. I don't know why. I guess there just aren't enough goats to go around for us. And so I was like, oh, I guess I gotta get some goat. So I also got goat. I have 2 goat shanks in the refrigerator right now. I'm gonna make a goat curry with that.
That sounds reasonable.
I think I don't know what else goat is used for.
I really don't know.
I'm not familiar. I just know that it has a much more intense flavor than lamb, so I think you really do need some intense spices to hold up to that. So that's why it's
really
typically
love
done.
goat.
I like goat too, but I think that's why it's typically done in a curry, or that's the most common way to consume goat, I think, or at least in America. Anyways,
you
I
can do a
did
kebab
that.
with it too.
Yeah, of course, you can do all the things you would do with lamb, but I think it's a little more gamey and more like mutton.
Give me
I
the
would say.
game. I want the
like
game.
the game too. Other than that, I've been playing a lot more Persona. I'm now 70 hours into the game. Holy shit. It's not over yet. I don't think it's close either, which is the problem. No, I'm still having a really fun time playing that game. Reminds me of my trip to Japan. The one time I went to Japan. It's just like everything that's good about anime and JRPGs in one game. I think that's why I like Persona a lot. And then I also Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, another 300-hour JRPG, came out on the Nintendo Switch, so of course I fucking bought that. So I play that on the train sometimes, and that game is
you are
pretty
to
addicting.
JRPGs as I am to turn-based strategy games.
Absolutely. That's That's why I don't make fun of you for playing those games, because I'm just as much of a fucking nerd. So I've been playing those games, really great. Nikki started watching Avatar The Last Airbender again, so I guess I've been watching a little bit of that. Great show, actually.
I tried to watch that show, but I don't know, the quality, like, it's in like 480p or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
it's
definitely.
Really hard
You
to
meant the
watch.
actual visual quality. I really like it. Still is. Don't worry. It's just, I think it just got released on Netflix or whatever. But
I started watching it on something or other, Netflix or whatever, and I was trying to watch it because I was like, I've attempted to watch this multiple times. I've seen like 3 episodes just like out of order. I would like to try and watch this whole thing, and I started watching it. It was like 480p, and I was just like, I can't waste my time with this.
2020, man, 2020. The cool thing, I really like the animation in that show, though. I believe it's hand drawn. I guess it's so old it has to be, right? The choreography in the fight scenes are really cool, and some of the concepts in the show are really fantastic. And there's cool characters, whatever. It's a cool show. Pretty cool side note, I believe it's a Western show, but obviously it looks and feels like an anime from Japan, so I think that's a really cool homage, or whatever you would say it's called, to Japanese anime. I like it a lot. And also, I drank a beer from KCBC called Science Project. It's a GOSE, G-O-S-E. Whatever kind of beer that is.
Gosh,
Not KCBC.
It's like a wheat beer?
Yeah,
right?
Definitely a wheat beer, for sure. Although KCBC is a very hipster, if you've seen any of their cans or designs. I'm not sure if you could get their beer outside of New York City. They're from Brooklyn, obviously, and very hipster. But my shop sells a lot of their beer, so I get to try a lot of it. So a lot of their beer have a lot of citrus and fruit, and their beers are typically colored, not like artificial, maybe artificial, I don't know, but with they look like fruit juice essentially, and they're unfiltered beers, if I'm not mistaken, most of them. They're pretty good. They're really nice for the summer, so that's what I had, half of that beer because I split it with Nikki. I only had 1 can. Anyways,
so it's got salt and coriander in addition to
the
what
Science Project
Vasa
or
does.
Ghost.
Ghost.
Yeah, that I could see that happening.
Ghost.
It's kind of cool. Anyways, that's about it for me. Of course, I also watched something very anime, you would say, called The Animatrix, Ivan. Let's get into it.
Me too. What a coincidence.
Buddy. Let's get into it. We're here to review and spoil The Animatrix, so if you haven't watched that, please go watch it. I guess we didn't give that any sort of warning, but those movies...
We did at the first episode of The Matrix.
Yeah.
Also, this movie released in 2003, and it's currently 2020.
Yes. That's
really feels like, it's been, whatever. So The Animatrix is a collection of short films. It's 9 animated short films, the majority of them being directed and written by lots of famous Japanese animators.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. The ones that weren't, so the first one, the Final Flight of the Osiris, which I think, in the original order, it was Final Flight of the Osiris, The Second Renaissance Part 1, Part 2, Kid Story, Program, World Record, Beyond, a Detective Story, and then Matriculated last. That is not the order in which we watched them.
Because we watched it on Amazon.
Yes, we did. Thank you, Jeff Bezos.
Sponsor us. Oh, good.
Get that $1 trillion, dude. You're great. You're doing God's work of raping the earth. So we watched it in Renaissance Part 1, Part 2, Program, World Record, Kid Story, Beyond, Detective Story, Matriculated, Final Flight of the Osiris.
And then there's also the DVD release, which is apparently different from both of the orders that we just mentioned.
Right. with Kid Story coming directly after Renaissance, Final Flight of the Osiris is still last.
So confused. Why?
Yeah.
This is. I mean, I'm not entirely sure the order would affect the movie, the overall perception of the movie. None of these stories are really connected at all, except for Renaissance
and that's
Part
like,
1 and 2.
let's talk
obviously.
about the general sense of this. Like the general sense that I got from the Animatrix is that I was bored. There, like, individually, some of the stories were interesting. Some of the visuals were pretty great. But as a whole, the fact that there wasn't like pacing as there would be for a usual movie, like this thing is long.
It's 101 minutes, right?
Yes, 9 animated films for 101 minutes, of which they're all segmented and broken up into various length stories, and it's just like some of them are like just like dumps of information, like Renaissance Part 1 and Part 2 are just like information dumps. Others of them are talking about some different like highfalutin thing. Kid Story, as much as I liked it visually, like we can get into all of those things. Like some of them, the plot is just like it's going to happen, so it's kind of boring. Like the story that they're telling.
Right. I generally the ones. Okay, so the ones just as an overview, I didn't really like the stories that connected directly with the 3 main movies. I personally just didn't think they were that interesting. But I liked more the stories that were just ancillary. Obviously I think there were 3 that connected directly to the Matrix: the Final Flight of the Osiris and Kid Story, and then I guess technically this Trinity one. The noir one, the film noir one.
The detective story.
Yeah.
The Renaissance Part 1 and Part 2, I think, were also,
I guess
like,
they can
directly connected.
Yeah, so I think this is a weird anthology for sure, but I also think that they were the directors of each of these films were given a lot of freedom within the constraints of the program of the Matrix, and I think that they really had cool stories to tell, and they came up with some really great concepts. I guess I don't necessarily know that to be true. The Wachowskis probably had a lot of directorial oversight in what was being told in these stories as they produced it, and of course they wrote the original Matrix trilogy, and they want this to tie into that, obviously.
They also write the Final Flight of the Osiris, and it was their information that was the basis for the second obvious. Renaissance Part 1 and Part 2. So they had direct tie-ins as well. I don't know.
I would expect them to have direct tie-ins at least to one of the stories, right? So, and I really like that they got a lot of different animation styles in this anthology. I think that's a really great I think it's a cool compilation of different animation styles. If anything, it's a really cool way to show off the medium of animation.
It felt more like a demo reel at times of like, these are the things that we could bring to the American shores for a global mature audience of the Western Western style.
Right. It was when this came out in 2003. Anime had definitely shown up in America and was quite popular by then, I would say, due to Toonami, really. I think
it's more of a young man's medium, to be honest.
Exactly. So this Toonami, I think these are kind of related, so humor me, if you will. Toonami obviously showed us, Ivan and I don't know if you watched Toonami when you were growing up.
I watched a ton of Toonami.
Right, as I assume a lot of young men in America, who are now young men in America, kids in America grew up watching that after school, and they were exposed
That's not
to
say
Dragon Ball
that
Z.
women and other whatever gender pronoun that is applicable
That's
would
not men.
never not have watched it.
Yeah.
But I think that generally the statistics bear out that it is.
Sorry to make that
a
assumption.
A male-dominated.
That was a mistake.
And I said it first, so like,
well,
yeah, but
it's all right. Anyways, so young people growing up in America watched anime a lot in the 90s and early 2000s. So this is probably coming out at and maybe their parents or people who were a little older in their high school years. I wasn't in high school in 2003. I was in middle school, I believe. Yes, I was in 7th grade, 8th grade maybe. Let's go with that. And so this was probably a little too mature. I mean, I didn't watch it in theaters. This was too mature for me, but I think it was really cool. And not to say that there weren't mature anime coming out, but I think the Animatrix was maybe a plea to get American audiences, as it came out in Japan, but it's an American movie, or produced in America, I would say. So it's a plea to an American audience that is more mature because of the themes that it deals with in the Animatrix. So or mature in age, not necessarily whatever. So I think this is a good way to expose those people who did not grow up on anime as I did in America, watching Toonami. I think this is a cool way to give, it's only 101 minutes, so it is palatable in that way. You don't have to watch an entire season to get it. So it's a good way to give you the sample platter of what animation is coming out of Japan, and giving it some more American stylization and themes, and I guess connecting it to an American movie, which is The Matrix.
For sure.
So that being
I also think it was
right?
just a way for the Wachowskis to work with animators that they really wanted to work with.
Yeah, they. I guess as a side note, the Wachowskis. I think it's pretty obvious from just watching The Matrix. If you just watch The Matrix, there's a lot of influence.
I mean, Trinity is the major from Ghost in the Shell, right?
Absolutely. So you can just draw. You can see just visually and thematically. You're getting a lot of things coming from out of Asia. All the kung fu is obviously Chinese, but you're getting, if you just look at the Matrix itself, it's backwards. A lot of the symbols there are Japanese symbols. So the Matrix coding, that is, except it's backwards. So I think they're so obviously obsessed with Japanese anime. And not that that's a bad thing. It's obviously a great thing. There's a lot of great stories that have been told throughout Japanese anime, and it's really cool that they brought that they got in contact and convinced some of these directors to direct stories, even if it didn't maybe come out to be the best anthology, as we're going to get into. So right. Let's start off from the beginning then. Renaissance Part 1 and 2. What was it called? The Second Renaissance Part 1?
Second Renaissance Part 1 and Part 2, yeah.
I thought this was a really cool story.
This is the one that I thought actually tied into The Matrix the best, because it was not a direct telling of the stories of any of the characters. It gives that background knowledge that we wanted to kind of explore without being overly too indulgent.
It wasn't fleshed out. It wasn't super fleshed out or anything. It didn't take up the whole movie. You know what I mean? Like, they could have done a whole movie on it, right? On the Second Renaissance. They could have just made that a movie. But because there's a lot of things to explore there, I thought it was really cool. The idea that I mean, obviously, I guess what's the movie with Will Smith? iRobot is basically this story, and obviously there have been many stories. When did iRobot come out? Actually, there have been many stories.
Was in the 60s.
Yeah, but and then so I would assume that
2004.
the Wachowskis drew from the book, obviously. Uh, so obviously there's been many stories about AI uprising and things, and so this is just one telling of that story. But I thought it was really cool that they brought in the robots tried and tried and tried to be accepted by human society once they broke off from it, and
Right.
and the humans just absolutely fucked that relationship up. I think that the idea that the humans that it basically tried to tell the story from the robots' perspective, as opposed to the Matrix, which is almost decidedly, from Zion's perspective, I would say. You learn a lot of things when you watch the go listen to our reviews, but I think it was really cool to tell the story from the robots' perspective, and it made it seem like that the robots are the victim here, and I think it's cool that in the original Matrix, the first Matrix, that no one knows this story at all. They don't know the details. Morpheus literally says it. We don't know who struck first, but we know that the humans were the ones that scorched the sky. So, I
don't think it's important there, right? All you need to know is that sometime long ago, the world got fucked, and the humans did the thing that forced the robot's hand.
Yeah.
And then the machines were forced to do what it's clear that they had to do. But what's interesting to me, and especially this medium, is that they make a lot of references to important moments in black civil rights and black rights movements, right? So the android who is
very
trying
relevant
for
to the time right now.
Exactly.
Look at us.
The android that is arrested for
killing
its owner is B166ER. Chief, I wrote it down and it was bigger, which was and this was me just watching the movie. I was like, is that an allusion to Bigger Thomas? Reading a little bit more, like the Wikipedia page, that's it. They directly reference that Bigger Thomas, Native Son, which is written by Richard Wright. In the novel, Bigger Thomas is growing up on Chicago's South Side. It's a lot of nature versus nurture, like the society, when the pressures of society force actions and just don't allow for the the growth of character, because it denies humanity to certain peoples. In this case, like there's the Black America versus white America. So in Native Son, Bigger Thomas is really is an intriguing character, because at once he commits this gross act of violence, but at the same time, the motivations, the reasons, the causalities, the freedom that he experiences in that act of violence and defiance, it's like that act of violence is this, like, violence is always being acted upon Bigger Thomas through the structure of the society, through the structure of policing, through the structure of the economic depression. So it's natural to have like an act of violence reciprocated, because that's just how, like, growing up in violence, that's a lot of what's known, and the only way to exact kind of independence, own forethought, like your own I forget what the word is that I'm trying to say, is through an act of violence. And I think that's an interesting dynamic to include in this, is like there's also a reference to the Dred Scott case, which basically ruled that black people were property and didn't have the rights of citizenship. Mm-hmm. So in the same way that the androids were acted violently upon by humans, treated like garbage, and also were denied their ability to sentience and citizenship, even though they were fully complicated, fully thinking things. I thought that was clever in that it was an easy way for a person to start to understand the position of the androids. Like, you know how iRobot, that's basically the whole premise of iRobot is like trying to understand robots as humans. And it's interesting that it's a black man who is in that position to make that connection. In this one, they're equating it to the black struggle for humanity, as the same way that androids are struggling for humanity. So it's not saying like that it's a great analogy to like androids, robots, and black people as the same, but I think it's the idea that the struggle is one that you can relate to by understanding the struggle of black people in America and worldwide, really.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool story to be told, for sure. And I think definitely, I guess, going on your connection to black people and these robots, in a way, I think that their I just thought of this, their hometown, I guess it's the mainframe that it eventually turned into, was sort of depicted almost in a way like Wakanda in Marvel. Because they're just like in the middle of nowhere in some desert. Obvious, I guess. I think they did go to Africa, right? That's where the robots.
Cradle of civilization.
Yeah, that's where they went.
Mesopotamia.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's Iraq.
Sorry, never mind.
Modern Iraq.
However,
they say that the Garden of Eden was in Africa because humanity came from Africa. So there's debates in terms of like where in the world the Garden of Eden technically is, whether it would be Iraq or whether it would be Africa. So like there's legitimacy to either claim. In the story, they say they go to Mesopotamia because it's the cradle of civilization, and that's where debatably cradle of civilization is. However, there's lots of anthropological research that says the cradle of civilization is African.
Yes.
Like there's in South Africa, there's a spot called the Cradle of Civilization.
Yeah.
It's like the oldest known archaeological dig that represents humanity or as a civilization living in a space.
It's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So the robots try to go to the UN and they get shit on there with a peace offering as well. And then I don't know. It has this narrator of who I believe is tapping into the Zion mainframe. That's what they were referring to?
Yeah, I
the
don't
Zion
really understand.
Library. I was very confused about that. So yeah, it starts off.
It seems like they have a Matrix
library
version library for that the humans have to access. But if you're from Zion, you could never access it because you can't check in.
Yeah, I was confused about that concept. Maybe the robots were recording everything.
Maybe it's that the robots preserved the history of Zion, and it was actually because you're saying that it's from the robot's perspective, right? It's from the machine's perspective. So perhaps this mainframe is actually the history of Zion as told by the machines who actually have a repository of knowledge which the humans have lost.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really cool that this one, I mean, this is how our viewing of this starts, right? So this is the tone it sets for the rest of this anthology. It's visually it's a very mature style, I would say, akin to some of the more mature animes, I would say, related to like Neon Genesis Evangelion in a way.
I thought it was very Akira-like.
Yeah, Akira for sure, definitely. I get vibes of that. I just meant in tone of Neon Genesis. The animation style is different. And of course, this person that directed it was Mahiro Maeda. I think he worked on. It says on his Wikipedia, where we get all our information, that he worked on some Studio Ghibli movies, which is pretty cool. He worked on Nazca Valley of the Valley of the Wind. I hate the title of that movie in English, but that's a really great movie. Obviously, all the movies are great. Castle in the Sky, I really like, and Porco Rosso.
Probably
one of the fewer, less viewed movies of studio of what's
It's
his name?
such a weird movie.
Yeah, it's a very strange movie.
Hayao Miyazaki.
But I love that movie too. So you can see some of that animation style, that sort of more like the robots were like more roundish. They had like that sort of animation style, I would say. And I think it was like the imagery from it. There are like two things that come to mind when I think of, I don't know if it was in part 1 or part 2, but specifically when they were beating that robot, the female robot that had the skin. I guess she had like some prosthetic skin on, and then they just crack open her head. That imagery comes to mind, and then I thought that came to mind before I watched this again. That specifically stuck with me for, I guess it's just a very violent scene. And then also I thought it was pretty cool
because it's both sexually explicit.
Yes.
Because she's got
tits out in the open.
Yeah. And so there's that, like, it's that weird mixing of sexuality and violence that we experience in like horror movies and also in this.
So
it's
maybe
like
that's
you don't know directly how to feel, but it's like sexually gratuitous and violently gratuitous.
Definitely. Yeah, that's so. I had actually previously only watched this once before rewatching it again a couple weeks ago, and that was specifically one of the scenes that stuck with me. So I guess that's what I wanted to bring up. And then also I thought it was pretty cool and gross in a way that they showed, or they wanted to show how the machines figured out how to make the Matrix and what to do with the humans. They like had the human's brain open on the back end, and they were just like poking around on the brain, and they could see that they can get certain reactions of the human and keep them under control just by sending electrical signals into their brain. So yeah. I thought that was really gross, obviously, but also kind of cool to show that this is the primitive way that the Matrix started. The machines just captured humans and just started fucking with them. So I thought that was a really cool and
it shows like a cycle
way.
Right?
Yeah.
The humans were shitty to the robots, do shitty things, got into a war. The robots tried to be peaceful, felt the reciprocation of the violence, then were shitty to the humans in this cycle that repeats itself. And kind of the cycle of violence is something that is intrinsic to the Matrix, right?
Of course.
How many different iterations in the Matrix were there?
Of course. So that story is told. I think it was if you're gonna open this anthology with any of them, I think that's actually probably the best one to start with. I thought it was definitely an engaging one. As we'll move on, we'll see that some of these sort of drag on a little too long, or don't have that interesting of a story to tell, maybe. But I thought this one was both an interesting story, a relevant story, and was paced pretty well. And animated pretty well. I liked both part 1 and 2. I thought they were interesting.
Like part 2 starts to get more like film grainy and glitchy, and that hurt my eyes. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and also I didn't like. I also personally hate when, and this was when they started in terms of just animation chronology. This is about when 3D animation was starting to get popular. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind 3D animation. I think there's really great places it's used, especially in like Pixar films and things like that. But I hate when anime uses 3D animation in conjunction with the 2D animation. I think it looks horrible, and I think this is a prime example of when it looks horrible. When they have the Sentinels are always animated throughout this anthology for some reason with the 3D models, and I think they looked hard
because they had those assets.
Yeah, I know, they had the assets. They had to reuse them. So basically, I don't know why they and maybe it's just easier, cheaper to do. But especially now, if you're going back to watch this, it looks like shit now. And I think it does not stand the test of time.
We'll get to looking like
but
shit
all the
when
other
we get to the
animation,
final flight.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's a different story, literally. But yeah, so that's my bit on adding. And I don't even one of my favorite anime does it a lot. Ghost in the Shell has a lot of 3D animation within the really beautifully drawn 2D animation, and I think it sort of detracts from the experience. But that's my opinion. Maybe some people like that.
I still
shit.
think it's the worst part of it. I like the 2D more, but we can do a Ghost in the Shell review later.
We'll do that later. It's not that long of a show, is it? Anyways, yeah, let's move on. What was the
Program
next thing
is
we
next.
watched?
Program is the short film with Phil Lamar, but it is the Japanese samurai fighting program.
This one was super weird, and
yes,
I think this one
Sis
probably
and
has
duo.
Oh yeah, I think this one probably has the weakest story to tell out of all of them. I don't think it's really an important story to tell. I think the other stories are cool conceptually, and therefore I think they had some validity. I feel like this one may have very well have could have been cut out. I think they just wanted to show off that this was a different style of anime, and wanted to have some sort of juxtaposition immediately after. I guess in the theatrical release it's Flight of Osiris first, and then it goes to this.
No, it goes to the Renaissance.
Never mind. That's not
this would come.
That's not related then.
This would come after Kid Story in the original release.
Okay, so I guess
so it's still a juxtaposition style with Kid Story.
Yeah, so maybe
it's still like flop, 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 flop,
Yeah.
which they tend to want to do.
Yeah, I think this one was only no offense to whoever wrote this or directed it. I'm sure they spent hours upon hours of their life doing it, and it is a cool style of animation, but I think it's only in there because it looks cool, I guess, in a way.
What I think is interesting about this part is the name Duo versus Neo, right? So the one versus Duo. So and then the idea that
Maybe
in each of the matrices, the one had to adhere to reinserting the source code.
Yeah.
So this is kind of that same debate, kind of more explicitly put in a fighting style.
Yeah.
With restarting and resetting the matrix, right?
Right, and it's they basically are trying to train this woman who I guess is a new recruit to their ship. You find this out at the end of the film, of course, the short film. Sorry, I'm trying to bite off a sneeze. Basically, they're trying to train her. It's a simulation training program. I guess you're told that in the beginning also, that it's a program.
But you don't understand. Right? You in the beginning you just think it's a fighting program. You don't think that it's a morality question program.
Right.
And I think what's important is like, if it was the one, right? Mm-hmm. Then she is in a sense fighting and debating the question of whether to restart the matrix and go into the new Zion with this select group of 26 people or whatever that was proposed to Neo, right? So
yeah,
I think that's an interesting debate, but one that I think was equally reflected within the Matrix films themselves.
Yeah, like I said, I think this one could have been cut and reduce the time of this movie by whatever 10 minutes or something. I don't know. Although I do like the animation. I obviously like I'm a fucking nerd. I like the fight scene. It looked cool or whatever.
I think it's aesthetically pleasing. But
yeah, it was
the morality tale is
the
whatever.
Bold colors. Well, it's like a lot of red and black. I remember gray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like single colors. I don't know how to describe it, but there's not a lot of shading, necessarily, except on the faces. But
But
I thought
primary colors.
primary colors. Let's go with that.
Solid
So
colors.
it was cool. I think again, not really worth talking about though. I think this one could have been cut, personally.
The
But-
next one is probably one of your favorites.
Yeah.
And I think we can leave it there. With World Record.
Yeah, I thought this one was really cool. I think mostly, maybe I like it a lot because when I was in high school, I ran track and field. So I thought it definitely this is about, I think conceptually is a very cool story. And this is where I think the Animatrix shines a lot in its ability to tell these one-off stories that are in the Matrix universe, that have a really cool. I assume this is what they thought, or they basically, or this is how a lot of the directors made their stories. They would come up with a concept that they thought was a really cool idea in the Matrix, such as someone who could run so fast they woke themselves up or something. I don't know. Let's leave it at that. And then designing a whole film around it. Maybe that's what this guy did. I'm not sure.
It's like, what if
how this
somebody
story was designed.
discovered that they could bend the rules in the Matrix,
Right. But
just
didn't
through
necessarily
sheer
know it.
willpower?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So I think that's a fucking awesome concept, and I really like the idea of putting it in a track and field, because I'm really sad that the Summer Olympics isn't happening, because I really love track and field, and I was super excited to see Usain Bolt run again. I really like him.
I think he retired, didn't he?
I thought he was going to run one more time. But I think, of course, really relevant to the person in this was from the United States, I believe, the main character of this short film. But I thought it was really cool. So basically, it follows this runner who and they're trying to tell the story through the narration, I guess, that understands that they're not necessarily that they're in a program, but they understand that there is something more, like Neo, I guess, in a way, that there's something more than what they're physically seeing. I think they don't necessarily understand that they're in a program, but they understand that there are rules that can be broken in the life that they're living. Mm-hmm. And they understand how to break those rules. So it was really cool. I think they make him really flamboyant in a way, I guess, when he's just walking. He's got his hand on his hip or something, and he's like when he's walking, talking to that reporter. I thought that was pretty funny. I think that's like just not like, I don't want to say racist, but it's like the Japanese, I don't know, just like the way black people are portrayed in Japanese anime is always super weird to me. It's not weird, but it's just like, is that how Japanese people think of black people, or is this specific to just this anime? They're just trying to write this character. I don't know. There's and especially if you go back to Dragon
look
Ball
at
Z
Final
or something,
Fantasy
but,
VII. Like,
yeah.
After playing Final Fantasy VII, the original, and seeing how they, what lines they gave to and how they
Barrett.
animated to Barrett, you know.
Yeah, there's
that's a little weird.
There's arguments to be made on both sides for Barrett specifically, I think. And I think people read too much into Final Fantasy VII in general. They take it way too seriously. It's just a video game, guys. But I don't think it's that impactful in your life. But if that's how it's gonna be, that's how it's gonna be. Live your life.
I think the idea being like depictions in the media have strong correlation to like understanding. So
Yes.
if this is the
Absolutely.
way that the Japanese animators understand
American
black people, it's kind of
runners.
It's whether it's just because he's like an American athlete who's a sprinter at the top of the game,
Yeah.
or whether it's because he's black. It's an interesting question that we don't know the motivations or the the reasoning behind, but I think it's an important topic to bring up.
I don't think it's like that they were trying to make a comment. I was just specifically commenting on how he was acting in that scene when he was talking to the reporter.
It threw me off too.
It was weird. It was a little weird, but I wasn't commenting on a black person being a fast runner or anything. And of course I didn't write any of this, all right? So this isn't I didn't make this. I mean, obviously...
Look at those eggshells you were just stepping around.
Anyways, I thought it was really cool. A lot of both of these short films have the agents being a really main stopping point the agents end a lot of these interactions throughout this anthology.
We see them in new kind of nuanced ways than we did as just this this antagonist that's really only focused on Neo for whatever reason, you know. So I think it gives them a more intimidating presence within the Matrix framework.
They are everyone, and they are no one. I thought it was pretty cool. Look, beat for beat, most quotable movie of all time. All right, I'm telling you, it's fucking pure gold. I love that movie. That's why we're doing this. But I obviously the agents catch on to this. They're tracking this runner, and when he beats his record, which is, I guess, it's just been, I thought it was cool that they did the research to basically, there's a lot of media surrounding no one can beat 9 seconds. It was no one can beat a 9-second 100-meter race or record, and this guy does it. And I think that's I thought that was a cool idea and kind of a little obscure, I would say, just for in general. I don't know, but I guess the physicality of it was really cool, and it's just such, I think track and field is such a pure competition of one skill, and I like running really fast. This person is way faster than you. But that's the thing that they focus on all their life. So I think it's a really cool disciplined sport that I think the Japanese culture, I don't know anything about Japanese track and field, but I think that a lot of Japanese culture surrounds itself in discipline and focus and things like that, and broad terms like that. So that's why they really like baseball, for instance. It's like a very stat-based discipline sport that like you make like fine-tuning your motion when you're batting can make all the difference, right? And just focusing on where the ball is. So I think maybe they can draw something from track and field in that way, that it's just like all about your technique and your movement when running. And I thought that was just a really cool concept. And then he actually wakes up in his race because as he breaks his record, and I thought that was, and he pulls a muscle, but he understands that it's just that the rules can be broken and he can overcome it through willpower, and he keeps running. And I think that's a really cool idea. And then like I said, he wakes up, and then he realizes he's in. He doesn't necessarily know if it was a dream or not, because the machine puts him right back into the Matrix, and he'll never be able to get out again. Except, didn't he?
But then at the end,
he jumps out,
whispers the word freedom, and
yeah,
stands up from that bolt in the wheelchair where they said he'd never walk again.
Never walk again. Right. So I thought that was one of the better of these anthology, personally, but maybe that's because I'm somehow connected to track and field. Not that I run ever anymore. You do more running than I do now. But I like track and field as as a concept, and I thought it was a really cool story. So I actually really like this one. But moving on, or what are your thoughts on this one? You thought the animation was weird, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an odd style, a unique style of animation, which made me like unnerved. I guess there were multiple reasons I was just like a little bit weirded out by this segment in particular, but I did think that like the just to echo kind of what you were saying before is this specific segment is interesting in that it delves into the human willpower of being in the Matrix and how human willpower could wake somebody up to the rules of the Matrix, to bending those things and being able to break them in a way that's that we only think of the people who have red pilled out can do. But this is like, what are the blue pills? What are the people who are still in the Matrix? Somebody at some point had to understand and break free, and I think this is a more interesting version of this than what the kid story is, which is the next one. Whereas the kid's story is a story of self-sublimation, like the idea that the kid was able to pull himself out of the Matrix, which it doesn't really fully make sense.
No.
So the kid is able to pull himself out of the Matrix, but magically the Nebuchadnezzar knows where to go and pick him up from?
Yeah. Well,
is there just like a general meeting point of like...
Didn't Neo catch him? Isn't that what happened? When he jumps up? I thought...
He pulls himself out.
He wakes himself up, but I thought like it. Okay, so the kid's story. He's contacting with Neo, like, you have to question your reality. You're not alone, or whatever. Who fucking cares? And he goes to school. He jumps off the building because the agents were chasing him, and Neo called him in school. And they sort of have like a Morpheus Neo interaction from the first Matrix. They pretty much mirror it, actually, except he's in school, and then he goes to the top of the building instead of going out with the agents. So I think that's obvious, direct connection. Right. But he jumps off, and then it goes to his grave, funeral, whatever, and then it's like, oh, such a sad day, whatever. And then he wakes, and then it shows him on the Nebuchadnezzar. And then I thought the last scene is that him falling again, and then Neo catches him. I thought that maybe... I thought that was what I watched. Maybe I'm wrong. I guess you have it right in front of you, didn't you?
Let me pull it up. But I didn't think that that's what happened at all. I thought that the kid convinced himself that that Neo pulled him out of the Matrix and whatever.
Oh, okay.
But
maybe
what had truthfully happened was that his self-assured belief in Neo
and that
and
he's
the fact
in the Matrix,
that he was the savior, pulled him out of the Matrix, and that's why Neo is like, the kid believes that Neo pulled him out, and Neo is like, no, you pulled yourself out, self-sublimation.
You saved
yourself. Yeah. And then, who are you? Am I alone? You are not alone. That's the last scene in that. After they wake up, there's no Neo coming in to save him. And I think the whole thing is
the Matrix.
that the kid woke himself up from just sheer belief in Jesus or Neo, whatever is the appropriate thing. I think that's fucking stupid. I don't know. It's like, why is he so special? Why is the kid so special? I just think that the kid is more important as the voice of the audience in the whole Matrix series, and like, just so happens to be that he's placed in these positions where his faith is something that makes him go a step further than what other people are willing to do. Yeah. And that's why he's in these special situations. But him pulling himself out with self-substantiation. Substantiation, not sublimation.
Trinity says that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think self-substantiation was possible.
So he pulls himself out of the Matrix and then gets dumped or flushed out by the thing for no good reason, even though the guy who broke the world record was pulled out, and then the robots were like, fuck you, we're putting you back in. But he pulled himself out of with self-substantiation, forced the machines to do whatever the red pill does to them, and then flushed him out of this garbage trail chute and gets picked up by the Nebuchadnezzar just magically?
Exactly.
Never made sense to me.
I personally don't like this one either. I honestly, I think... Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is a jump of asking the audience to believe too much when it comes to just plot jumps. I think it's not likely that it's either because they have to take the red pill in order for them to find them in the field of human bodies, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
those
that it
are
messes
the rules
with
that
their
they set
connections up to
the input-output system. It disrupts your input-output system, so we can pinpoint your location. I really don't know why I've seen this movie so many times, but Ivan, I'll tell you, I agree. I think that it is too much. It's too much of a leap of faith to ask us to go on this journey with him. So I think the only thing that I guess I like about this one that is a little deeper and just not so relevant at all is that it looks like a watercolor painting, and it's very blurry, and I think that's done on purpose because it's all a dream and it's supposed to be like that. So I think that they were trying to play visually with the audience in that way, and that this kid is waking up from his dream and remembering it. And if you try to remember your dream, I think in some descriptions when you try to remember your dream, it does look very blurry. You can't exactly pinpoint. Maybe that's the leap of faith they're asking us to go on, right? You can't remember, like Inception, you can't remember how you got here in the cafe with Ellen Page. Not Ellen. What's her name? It's Ellen Page, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then I was thinking, wait, Ellen? That's Ellen DeGeneres. No. That's the only other Ellen I know.
Different person of the LGBTQ community.
Yes. Also true, yes.
So another interesting note is the kid's original name is Michael Karl Popper, which is an obvious reference to the philosopher Karl Popper, who had many ideas of truth and metaphysicism, and he proposed 3 worlds, for instance. World 1 being the physical world or physical states, 2 being the world of the mind, mental states, ideas, and perceptions, and the 3rd being the body of human knowledge expressed in its manifold forms.
Did you hear about this parallel universe that these scientists in Antarctica discovered?
No.
That time is actually going backwards in it?
Let's do an entire podcast about this.
I think they wrote a paper. I'm not sure. Yeah, that was on the news like 2-3 weeks ago, maybe.
No, I didn't. I don't. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would you watch? Anyways.
NASA finds parallel universe. Okay, we're doing a podcast on that next week. This is all I want to talk about. Why did I not know about this?
Should have brought it up. Sorry. What was the next one, Ivan?
The next one is Beyond, which is a story about the cat. This one has a very Miyazaki. I would say a Miyazaki-style animation. Beyond. I thought it was pretty cute and pretty weird.
I thought it was a cool one.
It's basically the story of a girl who goes looking for her cat who has disappeared into this glitch in the Matrix, where kind of the physics of the world breaks. And so kids are like jumping off of high cliffs or second stories and not hitting the ground. Bottles don't shatter and things like that. So it's a really interesting kind of when the code of the machines kind of breaks and forms these.
They're copying over a file and it gets fucked up. It gets corrupt. That's exactly what happened. That's it.
They don't have enough processing power. They need more Q cores.
Not in the mainframe, dude. Have you seen those 3 power cords that Neo was following? God damn. That is a power supply. Anyway, that's a PSU. Yeah, I thought this one was cool. I thought it was charming. It wasn't very, like, the stakes weren't super high. I thought it was a good way to, it wasn't super dramatic or anything. I thought it was a good middle point for this anthology. Like, you're just calming down from the kid self-substantiating. You're so into the story. You're like, oh my god, I'm so connected. I finally understand the stories in the Matrix Revolutions and Reloaded. What they've explained the kid. And then we go to this cat, and the cat is cute. It's really fat, and the
Super
girl,
cute
this is the second girl that you see in panties and a crop top. So that's just what all Japanese men fantasize about, I think.
Clearly.
I mean, it's what I fantasize about, but that's because I'm a Japanese man at heart, I think. So. It's just like girls running around home in the summertime in their panties and crop tops or something. I don't know. Talking on the phone. I don't know. What is there to say? I think it's really cool conceptually that there is a glitch in the Matrix and people in the Matrix are taking advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
I
think
not
it's
much
a cute
else
interlude.
to it, though. Yeah, it's an interlude. Not much else to it.
It then
right?
just tells how like agents react to the problem, that not everybody has to get disconnected and die, which is cool.
Yeah, the agents are there to keep the order, as it were, I think. They're not there to kill everyone who saw this glitch in the Matrix. They're just there to keep the humans under control. That's what the agents are for.
I think it's interesting to have this juxtaposed right back to back with a detective story, which is the next one.
Mm-hmm. The detective story, as we move on, is about finding Trinity. But Trinity's telling him to find him, isn't he? Basically, there's a detective in what I assume is New York City, although I'm not entirely sure. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's the Matrix. Nothing exists. And it's I think a cool animation style. It's sort of in a film noir situation, like L.A. Noire. I thought that was really cool. And we follow him. There's also a cat, right, that throws him a hat. Japanese love cats.
It's great.
Love cats. So he basically gets contacted. I think it is to find Trinity, right?
Yeah.
So, but isn't it by Trinity?
No. I don't think so.
Who the agents are paying him to find Trinity then? Yes,
I think so.
So Trinity's fucking shit up in the Matrix, freeing people's minds, hacking the backdoor mainframe. She hacked the what did Neo say?
The power plant, I think.
You hacked the power plant. The IRS. You're doing something in the Matrix. You're broadcasting your pirate signal in the Matrix. And the agents want to stop her because she is really messing up the code of the Matrix. And this guy was hired by an agent with a lot of money, because the machines have infinite money in their programs that they wrote, and to find Trinity and stop her. And then I guess he realizes that doesn't Trinity contact him to help him?
Well, he keeps following the tracks and finds that she uses the Alice in Wonderland style thing, which is what we see her do with Neo as well.
Yeah.
And they eventually are able to... It's like a mirror image of the story of how she meets and introduces herself to Neo, right?
Right.
She pulls the bug out of this guy's eye, pulls the bug out of his stomach in the movie.
Yeah.
But, and in fact, the thing that I was thinking about just before it happened was like, why didn't the agents just jump into Neo, right? Why didn't the agents just jump into this guy when they were trying to track down Trinity? And that's exactly what they do here. It's like they telegraph it and then it happens. And then Trinity's like, well, that was...
It's too late for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought it was I thought it was a cool idea. I guess it's a way to show how Trinity... This is, I guess, on Trinity's search for Neo, to help Morpheus out in their search for Neo.
Yeah. It's also possible that he's
failed.
one of the people that had the kind of... because they're, like, all the children that are at the Oracle's...
Yeah.
Like training, daycare, or whatever, have that ability to become the one, right? You don't become the one until something significant happens.
Right.
So
and he's just
it might be possible
really great
that
detective.
he had some of that ability inside of him, so was part of that list that Trinity had, because Neo was the next one on the list, if we remember the Matrix, so maybe he was there before.
Right, it's possible. And it's, I guess the idea was just to show that Trinity was constantly searching, and that she failed a lot of times on the way to finding Neo. So I guess that's a cool idea. I don't think, again, it was what it was. It was a cool animation style, and it had.
I really like the noir.
Yeah, you love that.
Style.
You love that shit. Yeah, like I said, it's a very cool stylistic choice, and I think there was a cool story to tell there, and the interactions with the agents sort of tells your question about the Matrix. Why don't they just jump into the person that's right in front of Neo or whatever, or is Neo? Why didn't they just do that? So I guess it tells that story. That from that perspective.
A little bit, but not truly.
Bit.
Like once they took the bug out of his eye, how did they track him? Like if they can just track where he is at all times, why put a bug there? These are things that never made sense.
Too many plot holes. The next one is the robot one.
Yes, Matriculated, which is the one directed by the guy Peter Chung, who is most known for Aeon Flux, the animated series. It has a really, for me, like a really gross interpretation of humans. Like, interestingly enough, like humans looked gross and the robots looked really like relatable in this short.
Yeah,
film.
the humans had strange proportions and different weird punk. I guess he sort of went with the sort of futuristic steampunk-ish style that the Matrix has, but to a very exaggerated degree. They had like all sorts of different hair colors.
It's very Aeon Fluxy. Like if you look at the Aeon Flux animation and this short film animation, they're like a 1-to-1.
1-to-1. He used the same, very similar, if not the same exact style. This one I really liked. Again, conceptually, I thought it was a really cool idea. I did not like it at all, though, aside from that, because I thought it was just too long. The idea of this is that there's a rogue group that has an undisclosed location, and they lure machines into their scientific lab, machines in the wasteland, of course, and then they stun it, and they jack it into the Matrix. They developed a way to access the machine's mind, and they try to convince the machine through its own will to join their group of ragtag teams so that they can use the machine to do their bidding, which I think is a really cool idea. It's basically a guerrilla team of I guess humans who are trying to build up a machine force against the machines in the machine war. But
So
I
it
think
stands
that,
as outside of fighting them in the Matrix or through Zion. Like
yeah,
there are other different groups of people that survive.
exactly. It's a cool way to tell a different story in the Matrix universe. I thought it was a interesting story to tell, but where it goes wrong, I think, is as soon as they all jack into the Matrix together with this machine, they try to. It's like a fucking psychedelic trip. I guess that's one way to tell it. And then the machine ends up falling in love with with the main character of the story, which is fine. I think that's a really cool idea. But the path to get there is just literally the machine running through, I don't know, corridors of light, and
Basically, you put the machine on
confusing.
LSD, and he is like, humans are rad.
Yeah, man. Except now I'm in love with them. But it was like a fucking 10-minute segment. I don't know how long it was, of just the machine chasing the humans with no dialogue at all. And I'm fine with scenes with no dialogue. I love action scenes, man. But this scene was just so pointless, I think. It's so long and
I really didn't
boring
pay attention to it, to be honest.
hard to pay attention to. And the animation was weird, which is fine, but it was bad.
That monkey.
The monkey. Where there's no animals in this world except for that, I guess. And it also has a jack that can. The monkey can get jacked into the Matrix. What's going on? Or maybe it was I don't know what kind of primate it was. But anyways, this one was definitely the most forgettable, I would say.
I really didn't like it.
Maybe the kid. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
The animation style was freaky and made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Let's.
They had like the brutal machine versus machine fight. And then everybody dies, and then the machine jacks the dead woman into the Matrix so that he can fall in love with her in this infinite space.
I thought that was a cool idea, that he's like so in love with her that he wants to keep a hold of, I don't know, whatever. Okay.
And doesn't understand the death of humanity.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. But like I said, there's things within this story that are cool. But I just didn't like it as a whole at all.
Yeah. And
Moving
the last one in the Animatrix is the first one in the original. It would have been the first one in the original release, but is basically a worse version of the animation of the Polar Express, and is the final flight of the Osiris, which keys into basically Enter the Matrix, Matrix Reloaded. And sets up the entirety of the second and third movie, because the final flight of the Osiris is where the Osiris discovers the machine army that's going to invade Zion, and they get the information to a dead drop in the Matrix for
someone to pick
the
up. Ghosts of Niobe? No, it's
Yeah,
Bane.
it's Ghosts of Niobe that find it.
Oh, okay. What the hell was Bane picking up?
Bane and that crew were in the Matrix. They stayed behind to get word from the Oracle.
The Oracle. Okay, never mind. Anyways, yeah, Ghosts of Niobe, I guess, at the end of the Enter the Matrix, a game I never beat.
It's actually the first mission in Enter the Matrix.
Oh, is it the first? That's hilarious.
Yeah. The first mission in Enter the Matrix is picking up the package from the Osiris, which leads into the first meeting scene in the Matrix Reloaded, which is where they debrief on the information in the Matrix from the dead drop, which Niobe and Ghost got from that dead drop.
So basically, they knew that no one was going to beat Enter the Matrix because it was such a bad game. So they had to put the important plot device in the first mission.
Well, yes, so that you could then play along with the movie, so that you could get Niobe onto the freeway,
side by
as
side.
we described for 30 minutes in our second episode, The Matrix Reloaded Revisited.
Dude, the amount of times I played the first mission in Enter the Matrix just so I can enter the codes in the game, it's like amazing. I loved it so much. Anyways, but I think I never beat that first session.
I beat the whole game. I love that game. My sister and I
played countless hours of
balled
it,
out.
but I never beat it. I just kept restarting the first session. Oh my god, what a weirdo. Anyways, so this is it starts off with
they're about to bone in the dojo.
yeah, but I'm trying to remember their names. It's Thaddeus and the Asian woman.
Played by Pamela Adlon.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't even know who that is.
Pamela Adlon is the comedian. She's friends with Louis C.K.
Wait, that's her voice? She does the voice for her?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's so weird. What?
Captain
She's
Thaddeus
53.
and Jew.
She looks great. I think she's really attractive. But
then she's basically
Jew. Manabu.
Yeah. Actually, the production designer that I was just working on, the film that got shut down for COVID, works on her TV series.
Oh, that's really cool.
Better Things.
Pamela Adlon. Yeah, that I've never watched it, but I kind of wanted to watch it, mostly because I like her. Anyways, moving on, they had an epic samurai sword fight where they cut off each other's clothes, and it's really sexy, and they both peak. And they're in love, and then they're like, oh my god. I don't know. I remember this scene being way cooler when I was a kid. Now, rewatching it in 2020, the animation does not hold up. They definitely didn't motion capture the majority of it, if I'm not mistaken. Because it looks like a video game from 2003. Not
Movement
in terms of
is
graphics,
just really hard to
in terms
to
of
motion
movement.
capture.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's easy, but we've certainly come a long way in 2020. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, so I think it sort of throws you off. It's not the best, and then we go on to the real world where we have sort of. It's, basically the same exact scene that we always have in the fucking ship. We're getting chased by sentinels. Get all the guns. We have to pop the MP, but we have to wait for the person to get out. I don't know. And then basically they're sending her in to go put the final flight of the Osiris in the mailbox. And we get what has totally inspired the entire game, Mirror's Edge. I assure you. That scene, Asian woman running through the Matrix doing flips and shit, that's all Mirror's Edge is. This scene inspired that game, I assure you. The only source material is this final scene in the Matrix. Cyberpunk Asian woman running through a metropolis doing whatever she wants. And then basically she pushes the old woman out of the way, gets it in the mailbox, and then she dies because it explodes. So it's like it's the story that they wrote the Animatrix to tell. I think they wrote everything else just so they could tell this story. But it's also the worst thing that's in the Animatrix, I would have to say. Or it's hilarious. The thing that doesn't hold up at all. Because, again, of the animation style. So this goes back to video games as well. I think it's related because if we take a look at early 3D animation in video games, those games are currently the ones that are not, if we go back and play them, need the remastering, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that type of thing, in order to be palatable to a mainstream audience that didn't play it in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. Kids that didn't play it. So games that came out in PS1, N64, even early Xbox, I would say, don't necessarily hold up as well in 2020, but things that were right before it in the SNES era, or I guess like whatever the Genesis system of that time was, those games hold up super well because of the 2D animation. So I think this is going forward. If we look back at early 3D animation in movies and film, I think we see the same exact thing. So, and this is a prime example of it. The Flight of the Osiris looks like shit, and it
Polar
really
Express,
suffers from it. Polar
Titan
Express
AE.
better. Hungover Gaming approved. Polar Express. Hungover Gaming disapproved. Final Flight of the Osiris, which has a story to tell, but is definitely held back by the animation, I think. Personally.
Not Titan AE. What am I thinking of? Titan AE is a Don Bluth. I felt like there was another one, like a Final Fantasy 3D animated movie.
Oh yeah, there was Advent Children.
Advent
That's Final
Children.
Fantasy 7. I don't know if that might have looked better, because I remember Square Enix certainly on the forefront of cutscenes in video games back in the day. So they have really great animators on their games. I don't know if they still work there, but
So
I
the
assume
thing
they
is,
do.
A guy
great.
from Square Enix was one of the guys who was responsible for the English version direction.
A Flight of the Osiris?
So Jack Fletcher, the English version of the Animatrix was directed by Jack Fletcher, who brought on board the project voice actors who provided the voices of the English version of Square Enix Final Fantasy X. According to Wikipedia, which doesn't make any
That's
sense because
interesting.
every
Yeah.
single one of them is directed by a different person. So I'm not sure what they're talking
I don't know
about.
what that means.
But maybe they're talking about the Flight of the...
Osiris.
No. It's not. I don't know how this guy is involved, but on Wikipedia, he's there. So half-assed internet research. Square Enix guy was there. Sure, why not?
Well, you know what? It doesn't necessarily surprise me that Square Enix would be involved in early 3D animation coming out of Japan. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't know who directed this. It could have been an American studio.
Who directed the Final Flight of the Osiris?
Yeah.
Andy Jones, who
Okay, so
from Square Pictures.
I'm just saying Square Enix had a lot of really cool cutscenes back in the day. They still
It merged
do.
with Enix in 2003 to form Square Enix.
Yeah, that's Square. Yeah, so that's cool that there's
That's
some
where Square
vague
Enix comes in.
connection. That is exactly where Square Enix comes in. And of course, I'm referring to Square when I'm talking about the older Final Fantasy games, because Square Enix didn't really start making Final Fantasy games. I think even maybe Final Fantasy X was their first one.
And that's where this guy pulled the voice actors from. Bum, bum, bum. We've
Really?
nailed it.
Look, there. So all I'm saying, that's kind of an interesting connection through Wikipedia, I guess. There's some vague connection to Square Enix and the Animatrix. Anyways,
We
guys,
have
thank
managed to make this podcast as long as the Animatrix.
you. But which one will you watch? Tell us in the comment section below. I don't know if you'll watch either, because they're both pretty shitty. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We do it every week for you, sorta. And we try, anyways. We really hope you guys are staying safe out there in these trying times. Global pandemic. Riots on the field of the American fields.
Yes, in the fields.
In the American
Specifically the
cities,
fields.
obviously. We hope everyone's staying safe, and we will talk to you guys next week, I guess. What are we going to do? Do you want to do this? I gotta figure
We're
out how to
talking
get
about
Enter the
parallel
Matrix.
universes next week.
That's true. And then on the podcast, and we're going to try to get... We got to figure out how to download Enter the Matrix.
Yeah.
Legally, internet. We're going to download Enter the... Look, we both own the game. Just can't capture it. So we have to download it, all right? Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Catch you guys next week. Goodbye.
Bye.